Skill-based matchmaking is ruining gaming. We shall see.
The most important parts of our society. Since the dawn of civilization, humans have been competing against each other to see who can run the fastest, lift the heaviest, and to be the very best. Because there's nothing better than dedicating every ounce of your being to be able to say that you are superior to someone else. And in my
that's part of it. Whatever the reason people do certain things, it doesn't always have to be a competition against somebody else. There can always be like a competition between yourself. It just so happens that like most televised like competitions are just against another team, another person. Yeah, that's essentially a competition, but what is not televised or is not really, I don't know, maybe worth televising is like all of the things that person did or team, all of the things that they did to get to that point. Like things like the Super Bowl, like whatever the Super Bowl is for baseball, or like a golf tournament or whatever. What you're seeing is like the end product, the tippy top 1/10%, the best of the best. All these people competing against other people that are the best of the best, the rest. All right. So, yeah.
Modern times, this desire to compete manifests itself in competitive gaming. Because while I might not win a gold medal at the Olympics, I can drop 30 kills on Jet and gain 24 RR. It's basically the same thing. Competitive video.
True. I mean, dude, like there's competitive juggling, there's competitive unicycling or whatever. Like there's competitive ping pong, there's competitive badminton or whatever. You could take almost any hobby and make it a competition. There's competitive Rubik's Cube and cupping, cup stacking or whatever. All right, you make a competition out of anything.
Games historically have been some of the most popular titles, going all the way back to the 80s when arcade games would have a leaderboard where you could enter your initials if you achieved a high score. Even today, the best gamers in the world are rewarded with recognition, prize money, and of course a top spot on internationally recognized leaderboards. But as video games have grown in popularity, there's been some reduction in the name of fairness over pure competition. Skill-based matchmaking is a system implemented by some video games in order to keep things fair and fun for players of all levels.
Yeah, that was the intended goal, but there are a variety of versions of skill-based matchmaking, engagement-based matchmaking, so on and so forth. There's, not just one flavor, but essentially they're all intended, to do the same thing. Keep the player playing. That's it. Keep the player playing, because if a player gets loses too much, they're gonna just stop playing, is essentially the whole purpose of the skill-based matchmaking thing. I mean, I remember a time before matchmaking or skill-based matchmaking or whatever, in the Call of Duty and the Halo lobbies, where it was just, you just go in and it was a coin flip whether or not your teammates were good or bad. And you just played the game, and you just played to have fun. If you were like okay at the game, you could go like one, like get like a KD of like 1. Oh, I killed a dude, and then another dude killed me from the side or whatever. But those times are gone.
It's simple, right? Low skill players go against other low skill players, and high skill players go against other high skill players. Because we all know what it's like when that insta-lock Jet named I Miss Her shows up in your bronze lobby and drops 50 kills. Running into a player that's significantly better than you in a video game can be a nightmare and ruin your entire experience.
Oh yeah.
This has led to nearly every game nowadays implementing some form of skill-based matchmaking, and in a perfect world, everyone would be happy. Skill-based matchmaking would give all players a competitive experience that feels challenging yet rewarding. And over time, players would gradually see their skill improve as they got better at defeating opponents of similar skill. But
okay, so yeah, so let's say you have like a graph or whatever on a regular bell curve. Skill-based matchmaking is intended to protect new players from veteran players. All right, so skill-based matchmaking is good for like the lower than 50%, and it's bad for the upper 50% of players. In like the most simplest terms that I can explain. Um, because every skill-based matchmaking system is like not perfect. There's a lot of the times, you have like rank 1 players or whatever, like going on to like getting matched with like someone that's like in the 51st percentile. And if you know anything about like skill or whatever, it's like skill isn't just linear, like linear skill gain, like +1, +2, +3. There comes a point where it stops becoming linear and it starts becoming exponential. All right, to the power of 2, 3, so on and so forth. So when you have a player that is exponentially better than someone that's like maybe in the 51st percentile, it feels horrible to play against that person. Meanwhile, you're like just slightly above average. If you were to go into like a newer lobby, you would probably, do decent. But the fact of the matter is, skill-based matchmaking is not that great for like the 51st and on percentile. Now, granted, the people that are probably in like the top 90 percentile or maybe 95 percentile, they don't care about matchmaking or skill-based matchmaking because they're just the best at their game or whatever game. It doesn't have to be like FPS, or let's say this is like for anything. For fighting games, for racing, for any sports games, so on and so forth. I don't know if any other sports games have, or any other games besides FPSs have skill-based matchmaking. I know they have them for like ranked, like if your game has like a ladder, some sort of like leaderboard or something like that, then yeah, you're generally fine with there being skill-based matchmaking in ranked. But if you're just trying to like do pubs or whatever, and there's even like light skill-based matchmaking, it doesn't feel good.
If this were a perfect world, I would have 100,000 subscribers right now, and Apex Legends would have audio that actually worked. So just like my YouTube channel, skill-based matchmaking leaves much to be desired. But whether you think it's necessary for competitive gaming, or if you're on the side that thinks it should be removed entirely, in its current state, skill-based matchmaking has turned competitive gaming into a boring and unrewarding experience for players of all skill levels.
Yeah, that's pretty true. Because as long as there is some sort of money incentive in gaming and competitive gaming, then skill-based matchmaking is going to be a thing, because there's some 14, 16-year-old little kid, just trying to, do his best and just wipe the floor in whatever game. And there's nothing you can do about it. There's people are always gonna, and like this is in terms of like multiplayer games. This is not a thing in like single player games.
One of the most important parts of any competitive game is the presence of a skill gap, which defines the difference between a good player and a bad player.
Yeah, the skill gap. Certain games, depending on what game you're playing, it's okay to have like a large skill gap. In other games, it's not okay to have a large skill gap. Like it's a huge conversation to have. Like, how much randomness does your game have? Is there a lot of randomness? Then the skill gap is going to be very small. If there's not a lot of randomness, then your skill gap and skill expression is going to be huge. And in general, people that, dedicate themselves to one game are going to tend to want to play, a game like CS or Valorant, or, like attack FPS or something like that, where there's like a very high skill gap versus like something with a lot of randomness or whatever. I can't really think of a game off the top of my head, but Yeah.
Some games, this is easy to define. For games like Mario Kart, Rocket League, and Smash, the things that separate the boys from the men are fairly clear. You either drive faster, make better plays, or you're three-stocking some random kid who lives down the hall in your dorm because he told you, "Oh, bro, I'm nasty with Toon Link, I'll wash you." And you had to let him know to never speak to a god like that again. But for some games, the difference in skill between players can be a lot harder to define. This is common in team-based shooters like Valorant, Overwatch, and Call of Duty because you always seem to have that one insta-lock Reyna on your team who says they're carrying because they're top fragging. But we all know it's just because they're baiting their teammates and waiting for trades. So while someone with zero experience might not be able to tell the difference between a top 500 diva and someone who just picked her because he's seen a little too much Overwatch Rule 34, the difference in skill between players is most apparent once you actually face someone who's much better than you at the game. This is because in these games, skill is less about winning as it is about mastering the unique mechanics and core objectives of the game itself. In Valorant, that's aim and crosshair placement. In Apex Legends, that's movement and positioning. In Call of Duty, it's figuring out how not to die to cheaters.
Yeah, that's pretty true. You know, all the FPSs are basically the same. You know, as long as you got good aim and you got decent game sense, you'll be all right.
Regardless of the game you're playing, a skill gap is an essential part of the competitive gaming experience. It lets players know where they stand relative to others, and it's what makes competitive games fun. Widening the gap between yourself and lower skilled players and narrowing the gap between you and the pros gives a feeling of accomplishment similar to hitting a new PR in the gym. And it makes,
from a player perspective, you know, that, well, even though that's hard to say. Players play games for like whatever reason, you know. Yeah, like if you're just like a player and you value like high skill, it's going to be really hard to like close that gap because I mean, especially in like well-established games like CS, Val, Apex or whatever, where, you know, the top people are more or less, you know, like already up there. And if you're like a brand new player to the game or whatever, then you have like, I don't know, like you have a long road ahead of you to like learn all the mechanics of your favorite game, you know?
it's the grind for improvement.
It's easier to come into a brand new game and try to establish yourself as like, you know, some competitive, you know, try hard person.
Worth it. And you also get to impress the e-girls when you insta-lock Jet and drop 30. So yeah, that's pretty cool too. But just like a human being can only sprint so fast or jump so high, there's also a natural limit to how good a player can get at a video game. Just as every competitive game has a skill gap, there's also a skill ceiling. You can only aim so fast, you can only tap strafe so much, and you can only play the game for so many hours before any meaningful improvement in your game stops. After that, your individual skill is more of an asset that can be used to help your team win. And the biggest skill gap in gaming is the distance between the skill floor and the skill ceiling. And in a properly designed competitive game, this should be a fairly large gap. I mean, I wouldn't expect an iron.
That's going to depend on from game to game and what the developers want. You know, you could look at one game and like the difference between the floor and the ceiling could be like very tiny. But then you look at another game and the floor and the ceiling are going to be like huge. So it's just going to depend.
Iron 1 Sage main to be able to go toe-to-toe with a Radiant Jet. But the problem with skill-based matchmaking is that it's shortening the distance between the skill floor and the skill ceiling, making things less rewarding for players committed to grinding the game. SBMM, not to be confused with SSBM, is a system implemented by many video games to keep the game fair by placing players against other players around a similar skill level. In theory, this is something that should be healthy for video games.
In theory. But what ends up happening is every match, either public or ranked, ends up feeling like a tournament level match where everybody is trying as hard as they possibly can. Everyone's locked in. And yeah, you know, that's fine for like a couple matches, but like if you're just banging your head against the floor or the ceiling for that long, it's like for the vast majority of people, you know, they're just going to get burnt out. And it's not like skill-based matchmaking isn't like I said before, it's not a problem when you're like on the ladder board, you're on the ranked leaderboard or whatever, and you're queuing for those type of matches. The issue comes into play when it gets implemented, or there's like some soft version or light version in like public matches.
Regularly competing against people around your skill level over time should allow you to gradually improve as you start getting better at defeating people who play like you.
Uh, this is true in theory. However, there has never been a game to date where the game tries to explain its mechanics to you and tells you what it did wrong, like what you did wrong or whatever. The game is just there to facilitate an environment, and if you're like an average player, you might not know what you did wrong. You're just gonna go, okay, I lost, whatever. I could try to aim better. And then you're just gonna queue into the next match, you know? But, you know, if the game's not gonna tell you what you did wrong, maybe like, you know, something in Overwatch was like, oh, I got a gold damage or diamond damage or however it goes in Overwatch. It's like, no game has ever told you what you did wrong specifically to help you try to improve at it.
Skill-based matchmaking flattens the skill gap, allowing gamers to only have to play up to the skill of someone only slightly better than them.
Yeah, and then another issue with the whole skill-based matchmaking thing is the concurrent player base of your said game. If you're playing like a popular game, then yeah, this isn't really much of an issue trying to find other people around your skill level to like just shove into that match. But if you're playing at like weird hours, or you're like a really like high ranked person or whatever, and there's no one else on, then what's gonna happen? The game or whatever is gonna shove lower ranks into your match or whatever. And how's that gonna feel for that, you know, diamond level player to go up against, you know, for Apex, for like against a predator? You know, that's not gonna feel too good.
So this keeps games fair, fun, and rewarding, as players will never experience the feeling of getting absolutely dunked on by someone far more skilled than them. Now, I want to be clear and say that I'm not 100% against skill-based matchmaking. I think that in many games, it's extremely important to keep lower skilled and higher skilled players separate and allow players to progressively work their way up a skill ladder. I mean, that's kind of the entire point of competitive multiplayer games. Progression is an important piece in nearly every video game. In single-player, story-driven RPGs, progression is shown through the unlocking of new abilities and upgrades in the progression of the main story. In multiplayer games, however, progression is shown in your own individual improvement. The more you play the game, the better you should get, and your reward is being able to enjoy a competitive advantage over lesser skilled players. In games like Valorant, the skill gap between top players and average players is so significant that a couple of Radiants could realistically win a match against a full team of Silvers. And for that reason, it's important that these players stay in separate lobbies, because a 5v5 match of Silvers and Radiants wouldn't be fun for either team. However, this skill gap is much less significant in games like Call of Duty and Apex Legends, since team play is much more emphasized over individual gun skills. Still, it's no fun going against 3-stat Masters players in pub lobbies when you're solo queuing on Wraith. And this brings me to my first issue with skill-based matchmaking. Skill-based matchmaking is ruining the casual gaming experience.
Yeah, that is pretty true. It's not enough to where you just want to come home or whatever and you just turn your game on and you just want to relax and just play your favorite game or whatever. And then you could even ask, well, is there an issue with that situation in the first place? Like, you're coming home and you want to play like a high intensity, you know, fast paced like shooter game, and you're trying to relax. Like, that doesn't make sense. If you want to relax, go play like some chilled out game or whatever. Like, why are you trying to amp yourself up? I mean, that argument is there, but I don't know. That's a thing you just have to deal with.
You're constantly being thrown into lobbies with people of similar skill. You're always fighting for your life in every single match you play. Skill-based matchmaking makes your games fun and challenging and keeps you from matchmaking with players far better than you, sure. But how about the times when you just want to hop on, turn your brain off, and just enjoy the game? You can...
Exactly. Like, I don't know. It's like, lobbies like that should exist, but yeah, I always ask myself that question, like, why are you trying to turn your brain off and just mindlessly play like a competitive multiplayer? I mean, even if you want to compare it to like a pickup game in basketball, you can't really turn your brain off if you're trying to just chill out in the park or whatever, and you're trying to like 2v2 or 1v1 like some people in the park or whatever. I mean, yeah, you can like be out there and just like shoot hoops or whatever and just chill out. Much the same way in Apex, you can just go in the range and just practice like versus the dummies or whatever. But I think there's an issue with that concept of just coming home and wanting to turn your brain off and expecting 59 other people to go into the lobby with the same exact mindset that you do. I think there's an issue with that.
See this in games like Apex Legends, Call of Duty, and sometimes even Valorant. You might just want a hot drop fragment and finally go for that 4K badge you've wanted for so long. But if
no one has ever turned their brain off and gotten a 4K or 20 bomb in Apex, that's literally never happened. All right. It's actually the opposite. You need to be like in the zone for the entire match for something like that to happen. And I don't think that's like a healthy mindset to have, to just want to relax and just be rewarded with just the good shit in the game. I don't know.
The 3 stack of Pred players running Seer, Catalyst, and Newcastle are sitting on top of a building griefing you with a charge rifle from 300 meters away. The casual gaming experience,
that feels pretty shady.
In a lot of major titles has been ruined by skill-based matchmaking because it seems like the better you get, the more you get punished by harder lobbies when you just want to have fun in pubs. It's the reason I've been playing Apex Legends a lot less these days, because I might have one game where I place top 5 and for the rest of the night I feel like I'm solo queuing ALGS. I'm not
That's pretty true. That's a big reason for Apex.
I'm not saying that removing skill-based matchmaking would instantly make the game fun for casuals again, but I think that the pub's experience would benefit a lot from it. Being in a system that's designed to keep your games feeling sweaty and competitive takes that feeling of progression out of the game. As you get better at the game, your lobbies only get harder. So while your skill is improving, the game is just scaling the difficulty to keep that feeling of accomplishment just out of reach. It can be
So, and another point with the whole sense of progression, the more you progress skill-wise in a game, the more you realize you have to put forth more effort, like mental effort. It's not like you progress and you get better and all of a sudden you have to put forth less effort. That doesn't exist in like gaming, in sports, or anything that you can think of. It's like the better you get, the more mental effort and the more time you have to be turned on into like the flow state or whatever, and you have to be like aware of like what's going on.
Discouraging. It makes the game feel stale and unrewarding, and because of that you create a whole new problem once players start getting frustrated with the matchmaking system. Smurfing has been an issue in online competitive gaming since the very beginning, and a lot of times I hear people defending smurfing like, well actually you can learn a lot by going against a better player.
I hate smurfing. People that smurf, it's like, it's so stupid, man. Like, you just have your one account and bro, that's it. If you're like insanely good and you're sick of being, the skill-based matchmaking system in your game, and even if you queue into a pub, it's nothing but Pred 3 stacks or whatever. It's like, okay, well then welcome to the bell curve of the rest of people that play your game. All right. It's like, oh man. I mean, granted, anybody that's like above like that 51% percentile can like go ahead and make another account and, try to, invade the lower tier lobbies to try to get some videos or clips or whatever. But like, that's not the norm. It's like you're an outlier if you do that.
But an immortal jet showing up in your silver lobby is like if LeBron James showed up at your local gym and started playing a random game of pickup like it was the 2016 finals. The only thing I'm learning is how to uninstall the game forever. In a dev blog posted on December 20th, 2022, Valorant developers found that players create Smurf accounts for 2 main reasons. 1, they're bored of their own lobbies and want to Smurf so they can shit on easier opponents. Or 2, they're boosting their friends.
Yeah, both of those reasons are complete dog shit. And that just shows that there's an issue with the game. There's an issue with the system. I really wish there was like a way to like figure out how to like solve this issue of like smurfing or anything like that. Oh, they're oh shit. I just accidentally click.
2016 finals.
Wait, where was I? Where was I? What was that LeBron James thing? Oh no. Okay, right there.
The biggest issue they identified with smurfing is that it creates instability in their matchmaking.
Okay, yep. Okay. So I wanted to bring this up during the video. So, all of these games or whatever, or at least FPSs, have this like anti-cheat system or whatever, and it kind of works and it kind of doesn't. I think Valorant has, what was that, the Warden or the Warden system or something like that. I wanted to bring up another type of anti-cheat system that is, I think is worth, mentioning. So right here on X, we have like AnyBrain, and it's, they're just like in a startup or whatever company that they made their own anti-cheat system. And essentially, if you play a game with AnyBrain, the system, you literally make a digital thumbprint with how you like move your character, and it works for M&K, it works for controller or whatever, and it will link that account and that player to that specific thumbprint because of how you move your character, how you turn and whatnot. And the system puts like, a name on that thumbprint. But let's say all of a sudden, that they're not playing that account. This person is going to go jump onto a new account or whatever. Okay. So then that person logs into the new account, the Smurf account, and they start playing, their normal, like high skill self. And then what AnyBrain does is it's going to pick up your digital thumbprint of how you move, how you play, how you aim, so on and so forth. And it's going to recognize, this is the same person. They just log on to a new account, and it'll flag that account. On whether or not, they want to ban like Smurfs or whatever. So I just thought that was worth mentioning.
The matchmaking algorithm takes time to place someone in their correct rank. A high skill player on a new account makes it much more difficult for the matchmaker to properly identify the skill level that this player actually has. On top of that, they also found that players on Smurf accounts tend to be more toxic, which leads to other players having their games thrown or having to deal with abuse.
That actually makes zero sense. Like if you're like a high skill person and you make a Smurf account and then you go into a lower lobby, why would you even bother like talking shit to your teammates or the enemy team? It's like, no kidding, everybody isn't as good as you. That's why you're smurfing. Like, this makes zero sense. And another thing, like, I would be willing to bet like most of the people that do smurfs are like, they're very young, like age wise, so all the shit talking and whatnot, it's like, okay, it's understandable because their age. I don't know. It's just gamers need to be better.
Abusive behaviors while they're just trying to game. With skill-based matchmaking creating stagnation and boredom for players, low-level players often suffer with higher-level players coming down to Smurf in their lobbies. This makes matchmaking frustrating and unfairly punishes honest players who are looking to challenge themselves against those who are similarly skilled. The other issue I have with skill-based matchmaking is that, quite frankly, it's redundant. Any competitive game being made nowadays is implementing some type of ranked play, and I think this has probably been one of the healthiest additions to gaming since Fortnite popularized the Battle Pass.
Has it though? If a game tries to come out with like their ranked mode or whatever, every game is going to try to become like the next big esport and pop off, because of marketing. The more marketing and like vision you get on your game, the more people are willing to come in and play your game. The more people that play your game, the more willing they are to, come in, spend money on the game, so on and so forth, try it out. So yeah.
However, when you've already created a competitive skill-based experience for gamers through ranked play, adding skill-based matchmaking to public lobbies just feels unnecessary. If I'm fighting...
And also, something else he probably isn't gonna, mention or whatever. There's like, you have like, I'm just gonna use FPS as an example because that's what he's using most of the time. There's a lot of FPSs that have came out within the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years. And there's been a lot of new people that have like risen through the ranks, but there's also been a decent amount of returning people that just go from game to game and essentially, if the game comes out and there's like a ranked leaderboard or there's skill-based matchmaking in there, a lot of these like people that have played like some older game there's probably going to be some sort of like transitioning, or what do you call it, transition of skill from game to game to where they can just play like, I don't know, PUBG, and then all of a sudden, another BR comes out, Fortnite, yep, I'll go play that for a couple of years. Oh, that BR is like dying or whatever. Oh, Apex comes out. Oh, I'm gonna go play Apex for a little bit. It's like there's like a rising number of just gamers that they play one game, they get really good in one game, and they just use that skill and things that they've learned from this game, and then they just hop from game to game and just apply those things there. And this isn't like a good or a bad thing, but this is also a thing that happens.
For my life over 45 RP against Pret 3 stacks on World's Edge, it kind of doesn't make sense for me to leave rank just to continue to fight sweaty 3-stack players in pubs as well. I'm not saying that people should just solo queue all the time or that I should just never encounter high level players.
You should never solo queue in Apex.
Saying it's a problem when my pub lobbies feel sweatier than my ranked lobbies. Now you would think skill-based matchmaking works against that, but when you're constantly being thrown into lobbies with the best silvers you've ever seen, it makes you feel like you can never just take a break and enjoy the game with your friends. A lot of people think that without skill-based matchmaking, high-skill players would just run wild and stomp every single lobby they're in, but that's not really how it works. You see, in most games, skill level works like a bell curve, and I'm not really good at math either, but
oh, why didn't you show the current Apex bell curve? Why don't you do yourself a favor and go look at the current Apex bell curve of rank distribution? Get a chuckle out of that.
Basically, the vast majority of players in any competitive game are remarkably average. Even in a game like Valorant.
Yeah, like look at this. This is a normal distribution of like skill in a game, all right? This should be the norm.
63% of players are between bronze and gold, so the likelihood that you encounter a top ranked player even without SBMM is pretty low. So it's not like you're gonna queue into an unrated and run into NRG. I think the current state of skill-based matchmaking has put us in this weird spot where competitive game modes are lowering their skill ceiling and casual game modes are turning into sweatfest. So you may be asking, what's the solution? How do we find this balance between fairness and competition? One way is to flatten the curve when it comes to casual play, and I think that Fortnite is the best example of this. If you haven't learned how to build by now, then quite frankly, you're easy pickings for any 12-year-old with an internet connection and a 3-day weekend. Once it became clear that building was the major skill gap separating high-level players from the casuals, many people stopped playing. It just wasn't fun to go against a level 100 John Wick building up on your squad at light speed while you could barely throw up a wall to defend yourself.
Yeah, that is another great point to bring up. Like, the longer a competitive game is like, stays current and relative, the higher the skill gap becomes because, people, they get better over time. People learn like what the meta is. They data mine like the best like items or whatever in the game. And the skill ceiling just goes up and up the longer a game is out. If you look at like Valorant and CS, it's true there as well.
And eventually Fortnite saw this and introduced Zero Build. And while it was originally a limited time mode, it was so insanely popular that they decided to make it permanent. By getting rid of building and introducing new mechanics, casuals actually had a fighting chance and were able to enjoy the game again. Zero Build has been out for over a year now, and to this day I still hop on a few times a week with the bros for some casual fun on Fortnite. If we want gaming to actually keep being fun, we have to revive the casual experience even in competitive games. Even in Valorant, implementing changes that allow high level players to 5-stack with lower level players has actually allowed for more fair matchmaking. And since people can actually queue with their lower level friends without hopping on an alt account, there's even been a significant reduction in smurfing as well. But while the casual experience is important, it's also important to preserve the competitive integrity of ranked play as well. A huge issue today has been the casualization of competitive game modes. Ideally, when you play ranked, you should get better at the game as you rank up. But instead of putting in the time and effort that it takes to get better at a game, many people would rather game the system. This creates issues like cheaters, people getting boosted, and of course, rank inflation. The skill gap is the core element of a competitive game, and at the end of the day, if you're a 32-year-old father of two who only plays Apex 2 hours a week, yeah man, you probably shouldn't be in Masters with a streamer.
As long as you plug in a controller, you should be pretty fine though.
Who plays it for a living. The point of playing ranked game modes is to actually earn your rank, because in reality, being able to say you hit diamond in a video game means absolutely nothing. The real reward is getting better at the game that you enjoy so you can have more fun playing it. So when you cheat the system, the only person you're really cheating is yourself. Skill-based matchmaking is a simple solution.
But here's the thing. For the people that cheat, they don't care about all of that shit that you just said. If somebody just downloads cheats, their moral system is already not the same as yours. They just want to go in, you know, with their cheats and just destroy the entire lobby in whatever game. All right. So it is what it is, man. You can't really change their mind. You can't really change the mind of a cheater.
Solution to a problem that's a lot more complex than it seems. Making a game that's fun to play, competitive, and rewarding for players is, despite what some gamers may think, pretty damn hard. And I think that while devs are the ones paid to figure this stuff out, it takes both the community and the engineers to create an experience that we can all enjoy. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like and drop a comment down below if there's something you want to see me talk about next. As always, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Huh. I thought this was a good video. Definitely. Yeah, I mean, skill-based matchmaking isn't really going anywhere. It's here to stay, whether you like it or not. And the best thing that you could do is, I don't know, maybe change your mind on what you want to do after you come home. Is essentially what I'm getting at. Like, if you're trying to turn your brain off and perform really well, that's just not happening. All right. If you want to come home and like maybe down like a cup of coffee, you know, and then like be prepared to try or something, then it's like we could talk. But like, if you want to chill out after work, you probably shouldn't be playing like jumping into like a game that has like a rank system or whatever. There's plenty of other games that you can just turn your brain off and just chill to. I don't know. That's just my 2 cents. But overall, I thought this was a good video, definitely. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll see you on the next one, and take it easy, guys. Later.